Hi there, Jeffrey.
Morning.
Morning, you're right.
All good?
Yeah. How are things in New York?
You know, um, my motto has been figuring shit out lately. I won't swear when we're recording, but it's we're making do with what we can. I was saying to friends the other day, my observation is that because there's nothing going on, hopefully people don't feel like they're not missing out on anything,
Yeah.
um, because you can't. So, where are you?
Manchester, UK.
Okay, so similar shelter in place there as well, right? Yeah,
Locked down for the past 2 weeks, maybe. I don't know. I just lost count.
exactly. This is start of week 3. The first week we did it just work from home, but officially this is the start of the third week here. So yeah,
It's going to be like this, from what I know, it's going to be like this until the 15th of April.
I mean that's what they're saying at a minimum. You know, if people listened and behaved and took these orders seriously, maybe we could be in a safe spot by then. I live across the street from a park, and I see people in total violation of these social distancing orders all the time. Um, so April 15th is a great ideal. I'm not putting money on the 15th of April.
Yeah, I understand. So you live in the meatpacking district?
No, I live north in Hell's. I live about let's see, about 40 blocks north. I live in Hell's Kitchen.
Okay,
So straight down from here, though.
great. So, short introduction. I'm Madeline, and this is another online episode where we look to help individuals and businesses survive, adapt, and thrive. Streamed by thebeacons.org. As I said, I'm at home in Manchester, UK, in lockdown. And Jeffrey, you're in New York, Hell's Kitchen, USA, yeah?
Yes, that's correct. Good
Great.
morning.
So, for those who don't know, Jeffrey is the executive director at Meatpacking District Management Association. Um, if you're not from New York, Meatpacking District is a neighbor located on the far west side of Manhattan, yeah, bordered by Chelsea and West Village. So, first of all, who is Jeffrey LeFrancois? Is it the way? Yeah.
Yes, good pronunciation. Nicely
LeFrancois,
done.
and what can you tell us in a few words about your experience working with the Meatpacking District Management Association?
Sure. Good morning, or afternoon, for where you are. As you said, executive director of Meatpacking District Management Association, which is a business improvement district. And here in New York City, there are, I think, 77 business improvement districts now. And our job is to support the businesses, property owners, and residents of our districts within the boundary that make up our neighborhoods. We do that from various programs in under normal circumstances, might I make a caveat with, of marketing support for the neighborhood and businesses, programming, public space management, supplemental sanitation services, landscaping, and in our case, public safety as well. So over the past number of weeks, we've obviously seen some pretty dramatic some pretty dramatic changes take place in every aspect of New York City life, from business to personal and everything there in between. We've been doing our best to keep a pulse on what is happening on the ground while we've scaled back our sanitation team. At the same time, we now provide, we have public safety officers on the ground 7 nights a week, overnight, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., just because with a lack of people around, just having those couple extra eyes on the ground, we see as an important step we can take to protect property and businesses that are there. And the thing about a business improvement district is we have the ability to really listen and respond to our constituents, and that's what we're trying to do right now. So many of them are reeling in this moment as they figure out the next day, the next week. And so our job is to work with everybody. And if there's ways that we can support, we're going to do it.
Great. Now the COVID pandemic has turned the world's restaurants, retail shops, and even more hospitality businesses into ghost towns, right? You are the person responsible for working with property owners, retail shops, and even more. Basically, what are some of the challenges you've faced so far since the pandemic outbreak?
Um, I've said that, we're in week 3. This is the end of week 3 in New York, from both a recommended shutdown and then required by the governor. And this past week, it's felt like the dust has settled a little bit more, because folks know this shelter in place, this pause, as we're calling it here in New York, really means something. Our biggest challenge initially was, how do you balance the economic interest of a neighborhood whose job it is on my day-to-day to cheerlead and encourage folks to be coming down and spending time, spending money, visiting the Whitney Museum, the High Line, all the shops and restaurants that we have, in the face of a public health threat that requires you to stay socially distant from people, and to not be interacting as we do on a daily basis. So what our focus has become on the small team that we have, it's me plus 4 others on the team. We've doubled down on bringing the neighborhood to people digitally. We want to make sure that the district, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, keeps its place in New Yorkers and folks in the tri-state area and around the world, in the place in people's hearts and minds that the Meatpacking District often has. The neighborhood has seen tremendous change over the past 5, 10, and 20 years. And so we've been working really hard to make folks aware of that change, and that the district is a place where activity happens 24/7. And under normal circumstances, in non-COVID times, there's always something to do. And we believe previously, and we believe going forward, it will continue to be one of the best places to do things like shop, eat, play, visit museums in New York City. So we've quickly activated locals in the neighborhood to bring programming through our social media channels. And we're continuing to expand that network and offering to people, because folks want stuff to do. So why not bring something as it relates to the Meatpacking District to them that way?
Great. Now, in what has been a very short period of time, the world has changed dramatically, and the coronavirus has continued to spread across the world, bringing with it a great deal of uncertainty and worry. And what positive aspects can you think of for small and medium-sized businesses at the end of this outbreak?
That's probably one of the more difficult questions I've been giving thought to. Just the constant barrage of opinion pieces and thought that's going around right now, because there is so much, everything's happening so quickly. One of the first things that happened within the first week, we have threads of communication going between our retailers and our hospitality businesses in the district. And many of them were wondering what they can do to support healthcare workers, to support the hospitals in New York City, and support those that are deemed essential workers. Are folks keeping the grocery shelves stocked, the hardware stores open, all that kind of stuff. And so we've been trying to plug in appropriate ways that folks can connect with outlets to provide help. Food banks in New York City are struggling severely to provide food to New Yorkers right now. So just it's become less, as I mentioned before, we're typically a cheerleader for the neighborhood. Now we're doing our best to make sure that we're providing information to our businesses in a way that is appropriate for their use. So, we have some big headquarters in the Meatpacking District. Theory is headquartered there, and they're pivoting and figuring out how they can help in the making of personal protective equipment for healthcare workers.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to make sure that if there's some way we can support that, not financially, but to make sure that they're plugged in with the right folks at the state level and at the city health department level, we can provide support to that.
Great. And on a more positive note, what is one thing that the COVID can't take from the meatpacking district? What is your district's main strength?
I mean, our strength has always been the inherent charm of the neighborhood. If you've ever been, it's cobblestone streets. It's classic 19th, early 20th century architecture of warehouse building stock that has seen in the past 20 years some wonderful modern additions of architecture to the neighborhood. Our streets are conducive, no matter what the condition, to wandering. A lot of activity, commercial activity, takes place on side streets. It's not just about the avenues. That's not going to change. We're home to Chelsea Market, the High Line, the Whitney Museum, sort of our cultural anchor institutions. So, we've been trying to think about what the face of New York City, of Manhattan, of the meatpacking district is going to look like when the other side comes to being after this pandemic goes away. And the answer is we don't know. But as I mentioned at the beginning, our job is to work with everybody no matter what. And so we're going to do our best to continue to fire on all pistons, to support businesses where they are, where they need to be supported, and make sure, while that sort of inherent built-in charm doesn't go away, the makeup and character of our retail streetscape stays in effect as best we can help it be.
Okay. I'm sure that you are a very good strategist managing such an important district in New York. Have you noticed any good strategies implemented by the businesses you are closely working with?
One of the struggles has been the orders from the governor and the mayor. Let me back up. We realized very quickly, while we have a extremely robust restaurant and nightlife scene, all food services was required to stop, but for takeout and delivery. And we realized quickly that a lot of our restaurants are not takeout and delivery popular, right? Like they're a place you want to go and sit and enjoy a meal for a reason. So a number of them did recalibrate and figure out what they can do to provide takeout and delivery in a means that they don't typically do. It's for everybody. It's been about recalibrating and making things happen to meet New Yorkers where they need to be, which is one of the things that New York is really good at. It's that we've had to do this under such restrictions and in a way that we're not used to operating, because you're always next to somebody in New York, and now we're being told you can't be next to somebody. So I would say the continued ingenuity of entrepreneurs and businesses of making sure folks are continuing to stay in touch with their customer base. A lot of folks are trying to deepen their relationship at the hyper local level, right? Because we're being encouraged not to take public transit. I see very few taxis outside my window. I live on 11th Avenue, which is on the far west side of Manhattan. And so folks are walking around the neighborhood. So how can they deepen the relationship on the local side of things? And we're seeing that happen. Obviously, delivery companies are benefiting in a big way from this. So figuring out how what they're asking for from businesses doesn't really affect the bottom line also, as walk-in traffic has dropped considerably to businesses like that. So that's some of the stuff we've been seeing. Frankly, I think we're going to see whole lot more when we're the curve has dropped. We flattened it. We're beyond it, and business can begin to reopen in a sense, because there's going to have to be an adaptation, an evolution to how things happen. And while it's a little unnerving because a lot of it is unknown, I know that there's a whole lot of smart people who are ready to meet the needs of what's coming next.
Definitely. Jeffrey, is it now a good time for a business to cut off their spendings as much as possible, or should it still promote their business online, create awareness, invest in their people, or use their time wisely? maybe focus on updating the vision for the organization?
Two main points on that. We focus our job, no matter if the business has one business and it's located in the meatpacking district, or if it has 50 and it's a chain, across the city or across the country, whatever. We focus on supporting the business in the meatpacking district. One of the things we've shifted to in this time is if one of our contacts at a chain of New York City chain, of a national chain, is asking us to promote an online sale, a support, funding campaign for their employees, we're doing it. The circumstances are unique and dictate that we, think outside of our typical box. One of the struggles with the economic crisis that we're in right now is people need cash, and so. At the same time, revenue streams have literally evaporated for business. So how do you keep cash in the hands of people, whether it be your employees or consumers, and yet be forced to close business at the same time? I've joked with my partner that, I want to shop, but also at the same time, what am I going to buy? I'm sitting home all day long. And then there's some level of further putting more people at risk by doing all this online shopping right now. So it's we don't often think in terms of pandemic public health, issues and how that affects the economy. This to me is where government needs to get creative. We've never encountered a crisis like this, public health crisis, an economic crisis like this, in multiple generations. It is the 21st century. We shouldn't be approaching this crisis with 20th century solutions like we've used in past economic crises. And we're seeing things play out, on a global scale on how governments are addressing it. I wish I could say, that businesses shouldn't stop spending, but that's not prudent when at the same time a business has bills to pay, just like their employees have bills to pay. We are all in this boat exactly the same together right now, equally affected. I don't have an exact solution. I hope that more creative and economical minded folks are the ones really driving this, because it's going to dictate and determine just how long the economic crisis and contraction continues, until things begin to get back to some new semblance of normal.
Okay, speaking of the government's implication, what economic relief programs related to the impact of COVID do you think the small business owners are expecting from the government?
What, in the United States, we have three, big layers of government in New York City. We have the city government, we have the state government, and we have the federal government. Earlier this week, the CARES Act, which was the federal piece of legislation, went into effect. Mm-hmm. It was an 830-page, piece of legislation. I don't think I can read that many pages in a week. So and we're working with folks to figure out what's coming of it from businesses. Our local Congress member, Jerry Nadler, I've been in touch with his office, and they're coming out with a business resource guide so that businesses know what is in the plan. Like I mentioned, when it comes to business spending and employees, people need cash. And how is it that businesses who also need cash can be expected to just take on debt at a time like this when they don't know what their revenue streams are going to be on the other side? So I'm hoping, I know there's some grants that are a part of the federal legislation, which and there's also loan forgiveness programs, excuse me, that are tied to keeping your employees on the payroll, which I understand. But again, for some businesses to take on debt in this environment, especially when you think of a restaurant who run at particular very, very small tight margins, and you see just how vulnerable they are when something like this happens, is a big risk. And so what else can be done? We're seeing a number of things play out. There's talk in New York City of whether it be a commercial tenant or a residential tenant, be allowed to use some of their what is used as a rent security deposit towards their rent for any given time. I've heard of a number of landlords considering that as an option to keep cash flow going. On the landlord side of things. When you think about it, property owners are revenue disbursement streams for cities, states, and governments, right? They collect rent payments, mortgages, and then disperse it accordingly for where their bills are due. So we can't just dry up one revenue stream and expect the other to automatically assume it. That security deposit solution is just one that I've been hearing about. If there's going to be some kind of rent cancellation, well, then there has to be a subsidy on the other side. And so how can that happen at the same time when the city and the state are not allowed to take on debt and they have to balance their budget, which to me means the federal government, who can take on debt, needs to be stepping in a bigger way. There's not a panacea. I don't know what it is, and I haven't heard a single economist speak to what's going to fix it. But I think that more and more people are realizing on all sides of the aisle, this is unparalleled, and a lot will be needed. And unfortunately, we're gonna kind of have to do a play as you go kind of moment in this right now. At least that's what we're seeing happen here. And I know I've been long-winded here, but the only other thought from in New York City, business interruption insurance is pretty common here. Folks, however, are finding that there are clauses in their insurance policies that are not allowing them to file claims because of the type of interruption they've incurred. So again, the government can't really dictate that an insurance company needs to pay on this. Some say it's unconstitutional, it's a breach of contract. So if the feds get the insurance company at the table and say, we'll provide you X to start paying out on these claims because this is a pretty extreme circumstance, again, it's about keeping the money flowing right now. So that to me could be another creative way to do just that. We'll see what comes of it. I know there's conversations being had around it, and hopefully they come to being.
Okay, so what do you think there is space for the property management companies to rethink how they work, the way they?
I mean, I think everybody right now is taking a moment. I've been using the word recalibrate a lot. It's like we're downshifting before we can, speed back up, get the RPMs kicking higher, and then shift into a more comfortable gear, to use a car reference. Everybody, whether you're a property owner, a renter, of commercial or residential property, you're figuring out your next move. And there's going to be a moment of seeing what the market bears in this regard, especially in New York City. Real estate is our market. And how is the market going to be affected when it comes to cost per square foot, property value, property taxes, assessment for the city and state? All that's going to be determined over the course of the rest of this year. And there's no doubt there will be effects that ripple into 2021 and beyond. I don't know, again, what that recalibration looks like. One of the things I do, and I really enjoy doing, is talking to stakeholders in our neighborhood, and also being sure I stay connected to all my peers, other directors of business improvement districts around the city. All our neighborhoods are very different, but sometimes we can find answers to others' solutions, and that's what we're leaning into right now. Our networks for support, for ideas, and for how best to move forward.
Okay. Now the district you manage is known as a very creative one with technology and design companies, right? How would you stay on top of the market trends in a dynamic environment?
I think that again, it's all a moment of like recalibration of like what places thrive, what type of business thrives in this environment, or who can find a place in the current sort of structure of the business environment to thrive, and then what will it look like to thrive after this, and that's all again yet to be played out. Technology companies, I think, are doing a really many of them are doing a really stand-up job of stepping in, of helping.
Yeah.
We are home to Google in New York City, and they just announced an $800 million program to help small and medium-sized businesses across the country. You know, they're looking at ways of how they can double down on their support for businesses, and figure out how they can, you know, whether it's help businesses do better at having an online presence, so they can, you know, develop that revenue stream there, or just literally becoming a better user of in this case Google's tools, on how to make sure you're using all that those platforms have to offer, and then it's going to be about what Tech for creatively figures out how to help businesses better prepare for this the next time something like this happens, and what can you do coming out of this to be not just prepared but to be on a level foot, to step off from this going forward. I think that the businesses that we have are gonna stay put and continue to be able to play a big part of that. And then, as with any change in the market, whether it be, you know, whatever it is, there's going to be different businesses that pop up, different missions that come from technology companies, from the creative sector out of this, because global issues inform how we as people do business and need to go about our lives. And I think that's going to play out here.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be easier for the tech companies or design to work from home, for example, or I don't think they're too scared of this whole mess at the moment. Which is
they are able to be nimble in a way that a retail brick and mortar retail shop cannot be, or that a restaurant cannot be. I think a lot of restaurants, actually, what I've heard in my neighborhood and in meatpacking and across the 5 boroughs, is that sure, we could stay open for takeout and delivery, but at the same time, I'm not getting orders to make it profitable for the small staff that I have to keep on, for the amount of food we have to keep in the restaurant to keep a menu available for people to order from. So these are the types of decisions that folks are making. Sure, there's ideals that the state has put into play, right? You can order, you know, cocktails to go now in New York City, which was a total give to the restaurant industry for good reason. But is that going to really be able to help you keep your restaurant open in this environment? For many, the case has not been true, unfortunately. So yeah, it's all going to come down to what you can do during and after, to see what comes of it right now.
Okay, so speaking of working from home, now remote work is a new reality for most of the people now. And how do you manage to stay productive and when you're away from the office?
Yeah, it's good. I start by getting dressed, which is a really important thing. Hasn't happened every day, but I've found that most days, like it just makes you feel better. We're in our team is in regular check-in on various channels and modes of communication. And I find that just like I did in the office, I'm doing it at home. I've got my list going. I feel like I'm on the phone more now or Zoom calls or whatever it is, more now than I have been in years, which is a good thing. Our line of work, like I mentioned, has not slowed up in this moment because we're working so hard to make sure that our neighborhood keeps a place in the thought and minds of people in a positive way. and that we're not just bringing content to people that's relevant to our district, but we're supporting businesses and property owners and residents like we were when we're at our office and at our desk. So for me, it's been, and also I have found it very heartening to be working on things, not just heartening, but like effective, to be working on things that are not related to COVID right now. It's nice to take a meeting that pulls me away from the sort of crisis management that we've been in for the past 4 weeks, because it unlocks the other side of your brain, frankly, and you get to dig in on something else to get back to what feels like, dealing with the regular issues of the day.
You need to keep yourself sane.
Exactly. And I think that's a big part of it. And I've thoroughly enjoyed, I've realized that like making sure my calendar has non-COVID related meetings and topics on it has been an important thing to do.
So this is a bonus question. What do you like to do outside of work? How do you keep yourself sane?
Well, I've always been a big fan of cooking. So we have had no shortage of cooking in our house. One of my big hobbies is, though, I'm a potter. And I have not been able to do that because obviously my pottery studio has been shut down. And, I'm a big traveler. And the other big thing I've been complaining about is I don't even have a plane ticket, in the horizon on the calendar right now. And it's really frustrating because I don't know when that's going to happen. So we've, my partner actually has a Movie Mondays club. So we've kept that going with the group of friends. Every Monday, we're all sitting and watching the same movie, and then we talk about it, that kind of thing. So figuring out hobbies at home has been the thing. And yeah, there's been lots of memes going around, of course, people saying, man, I really wish I had more hobbies than like just going to good restaurants and bars and being out and about. So we'll see what comes of this for more people, but just figuring out what new things to do.
Great. Now, are there any final thoughts you would like to add on top of what we just discussed, Jeffrey?
First of all, thank you for this interview. It's given me even more to think about because like I mentioned in the beginning, there's so much information going around and different thought processes and different proposals and ideas that in a crisis, the key is how quickly can you reduce down all that information to determine a best outcome. And I think that so many people are doing the best they absolutely can under the given circumstances. And that's what I just hope people keep doing. We cannot give up. New York is extraordinarily resilient, and we will be challenged in a way we never have before. But it will happen. So I sort of, we are a city of people, and one of the startling things right now is that our city is empty in a way that it's not ever, it never has been before. So we can't, we have to remember how great things were to make sure that they come out really, really great on the other end. And I think we're totally capable of that.
Yeah, great. So the city that never sleeps is finally getting some rest now.
It is eerily quiet, but as we joked last night, it's like we're living in the country because of how quiet it is right now. But yeah, we're taking that much needed pause, albeit a required one, hopefully for good reason. And we'll come back roaring and ready to go as ever. So.
Great. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you very much for your time, Jeffrey. Really appreciate it. And wish you all the best with your district. And let's just hope everything is going to come back to normal.
Exactly. Likewise. Thank you for the time and stay safe. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye. Bye-bye.